Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Leicestershire and Rutland Police and Crime panel this afternoon. We have received a lot of apologies, but we are quorate, so we are able to go ahead this afternoon, sorry, even. So we've had apologies from Barisha, Councillor Cox, Councillor Day, who is no longer a member of the panel, Councillor Lloydell, Salma, one of our independent members, and Councillor Woodman has also sent his apologies, and I don't think we've got any subs, have we? No one's sent any subs, okay. Okay, so the first item is election of a vice chairman, as Sarah Russell was our vice chairman, but obviously she's stepped back from the panel now. It will only be a vice chairman for this meeting because we then have a AGM in June where we'll re-elect all our officers. So is anyone wanting to be vice chairman for one meeting, or should we just move it to the AGM in June and start again?
Yeah, for me, the value of the vice chair is if the chair comes to tender, you're clearly here. so I would certainly suggest it. It's a bit of unnecessary bureaucracy.
Yeah, we'll just move it to the June AGM and we'll select obviously the chair and the vice chair as of then. Okay, minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of February. Is everyone happy with the accuracy of the minutes? Everyone okay with them that was here? Okay, on to public question time. We have had one public question on e-scooters. That has been answered and we've not advised of a supplementary, so that's already on the website anyway, so that can be taken as read. Item 4, to advise of any other items which the chairman's decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. There's nothing urgent. And item 5 is declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Has anyone got any interest they need to declare? Okay, as the Police and Crime Commissioner has not actually arrived at the meeting yet, we're going to just rejig the agenda around. If everyone's okay, we can deal with some of the issues that don't need input from the Police and Crime Commissioner. So if we can just jump to item 9, if that's okay for all members. So that's on page 141 to 148. So this is the complaints subcommittee procedure, and I think Lauren, are you going to lead this item for us?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, members. You'll be aware that back in 2012, when this panel was first established, there was a delegation to me in consultation with the chair to resolve complaints that were made about the PCC informally, or to refer it to a subcommittee, also to resolve informally, because that is the only power available to the panel under the relevant legislation. And I noticed when we were reviewing the Constitution that there isn't actually a process for the subcommittee, and I thought it would be a useful opportunity as the panel was meeting today to try and formalise that in case it is required in the future. So the proposal simply before the panel today is to give authority to establish a subcommittee comprising 3 members drawn from this panel on a politically balanced basis to meet to assist when required in the informal resolution of complaints. And they've drafted a procedure which is attached to the paper, setting out how I recommend to the panel the process should be dealt with, so that there's openness and transparency and an opportunity for complainants and the PCC, of course, to set out the issues that are part of a complaint, but no substantive change to the process, as we're tied into the legislative process of reviewing complaints and trying to resolve them informally, panel. So I think that's probably all I wanted to say on the matter, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Is there any questions or comments on this item from anyone? Ellie?
Deborah, you'll remember that I did try to raise a complaint at one point, so I'm very pleased that we see this policy in place. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from anyone? Are we happy to accept this as our subcommittee procedures? Okay, thank you very much. That's agreed by everyone. Okay, we might as well just move on to item 10 while the PCC and the Deputy PCC settle in. They've now arrived at the panel meeting. So if we go on to item 10, so the performance of Leicestershire Police concerning rape cases task and finish group, so pages 149 to 154. And Damien, do you want to just highlight anything on here for us?
Thanks, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval from the Police and Crime Panel to formally establish a task and finish group in order to provide additional scrutiny of the Police and Crime Commissioner's activity to improve the performance of Leicestershire Police when it comes to rape cases in terms of outcomes for victims. So the panel received a report in December on rape cases, and they were concerned about the overall performance and the traumatic impact it had on victims, and therefore requested that a subcommittee be set up to further scrutinise the Police and Crime Commissioner's role. The scoping documents attached at page 153 for the panel's approval. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's 3 members. Ellie, you were put on in your absence, but I understand you're happy to sit on this panel. So for those members that are sitting on the panel, and obviously for the rest of the Police and Crime panel, has anyone got any comments or questions about the scoping document? Do note probably the timelines. We're probably not going to make those timelines, but we can be a little bit lenient with those time panels. I don't think we're going to finish by June on this, because we need to arrange, once this is agreed, to meet with the force and the force leads to start with, so it could take a little while to actually get in place. But other than that, I haven't got any comments further on this. Is anyone else? Everyone happy with it? Les?
Thanks, Chair. I totally agree with you with the timeline, and I don't think that is achievable for various reasons. But I mean, we prompted this, and I think I probably prompted it as something that we should understand. And it's not necessarily about the performance, it's about the collective performance. It's a national issue that we need to understand. We can only examine and investigate and qualify and quantify Leicestershire and Rutland. So for me, I'm happy with the scoping documents as it stands, but I wouldn't want it to get in the way of us getting into the granular detail that we may need to look at as we go through the process. So that's my only comment, Chair, but happy to support it.
I think there will be as you go forward, and obviously meeting with the force leads to get a common ground about what data you're actually hoping and what data they can allow you to look at, etc. So I think it will move as you move forward through the panel meeting. But obviously if there's any problems or anything, then we can always bring it back to panel for consideration if we need to. Any other comments from anyone? Are we happy to accept this? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll go back now to the agenda as it's set out. So we're moving back to item 6, the Local Criminal Justice Board update, pages 9 to 24. I don't know who's introducing this. Charlie?
Just very briefly. So obviously delighted to present this report. I don't know whether well, there's a lot of bedtime reading attached to it, but I'm happy to just go over a few of the salient points and then take questions with your permission. So the 2 big issues that came across at the first Local Criminal Justice Board on the 6th of February were the National Crown Court backlog and prison overcapacity. So those were the main themes that we explored. Thanks were given to Chief Constable Rob Nixon for everything that he's done as his local and national lead for criminal justice. We looked at the timeliness of the victim's journey in the Magistrates' Court, which doesn't have the same backlog as the Crown Court. So things look quite good in the Magistrates' Court. In terms of the Crown Court, and there's still issues around the National Crown Court backlog. There's recommendations that are currently being considered by Sir Brian Levison in terms of restructuring the Magistrates' Court and the Crown Court and almost having an intermediate court, but we don't know the exact detail of those recommendations yet. In terms of the Crown Court Improvement Group, there's some good work going on in our force area in terms of how to improve the situation in the Crown Court. I did take the time to visit Leicester Crown Court. There was a wait time, a lot of time waiting for defence barristers, and there's issues in terms of funding defence barristers and their ability to participate in cases simply because of the fact that they're so stretched, and it's hard to get the the criminal bar, defence barristers into criminal law at the moment, and also recorder sitting times. But this is within the context of the national dialogue. You can see as well, in terms of what our Criminal Justice Board are looking at, is how we can really focus on relieving pressure on our local criminal justice system by having effective violence reduction unit schemes and crime prevention as well. So looking at how we can relieve that pressure locally. And what was good, what was really positive actually, is on a visit to HMP Stockham, was to see the good work that they've actually done with our violence reduction network and reducing reoffending in prison. I think one of the big issues for us as an area is housing, and many prisoners are leaving prison with something, one of the 4 things that maybe they do need to leave prison with. So one being a job, the other being housing, another being a community mentor, and possibly having all their benefits sorted on day one of leaving prison. But I think what we're experiencing at the moment is the pressure on borough councils and councils in general in terms of their housing stock, and not necessarily being able to house prisoners, which could add to the pressure on the criminal justice system and that reoffending cycle. So we looked at all of those types of things, and you can see as well the other big issue that we focused on was the prison estate, the fact that we've got 85,000 individuals in our adult prison estate, and prison overcapacity, and how we can be ready for any other early release programmes that come our way. Leicestershire had a very positive good practice in terms of dealing with the early release scheme, and I think if you can see Assistant Chief Constable Michaela Kerr's report, you can see all the good work that she's done with our criminal justice partners in relation to leading on our early release programme in Leicestershire back in 2024. And what's really good about the work that she did there is that they set up this prison capacity gold group, which is multi-agency partners working together, identifying how they can deal with any early release programs. And I think that would look to restand in the event that these prison overcapacity issues continue. So it may be that we need that group to almost restand now, to be ready for any prison overcapacity issues that are likely to be experienced this year, and probably sooner this year rather than later. So there's some salient things in the report, and obviously there's a lot of bedtime reading in this as well, in terms of all of the attachments, but happy to take any questions or any points of clarity that I haven't been clear enough.
Thank you. Yeah, just one point from me before I open it up for questions. I think a lot of the information you've included in there, it wasn't really clear how that was relevant at a local level. And I think you've just said a lot of bedtime reading. Well, to me, it wasn't clear that that's bedtime reading. So I'm wading through it, expecting to find some local issue that I need to scrutinise. So I suppose if you're going to, for future reference, if you're going to include something that's not specifically for us for this panel to scrutinise, but is relevant if we've got time to read it, just include it as a link and say there's additional information here, because I was wading through all of that, realising that it was nothing that I needed to scrutinise. So just some feedback from me sort of going forward. So, you know, for me, it was only the pages 10 to 14 that was of any relevance for me to really study, and also the information from Assistant Chief Constable Kerr. So just a bit of feedback really from me on that.
Yep, no, thank you for that feedback, and it's something obviously I'll take into account for the next report. And also I think the problem is the national issues are also our local issues, so it's hard to, all of our areas are suffering with that national Crown Court backlog and the prison overcapacity issues, but I fully appreciate what you're saying. Thank you.
I'll open up to panel for questions to start. Really?
Not really a question, just a comment, I suppose, in and amongst people who all feel the pressures of the housing crisis. Everyone in the room is aware of them, but clearly, as a local authority, we get to work very closely with Leicester Prison in terms of the pathway from prison into housing. We don't have that upstream work. It's not got capability, or we've not got the inroads to be able to do that across the country with other people who are going to be discharged into Leicester. So it's just something about the system, I think, is more a comment, just that actually a better joined up system where housing can get involved at an earlier stage, pre-release, I'm sure will benefit everybody in terms of making sure that that cornerstone of good housing is provided.
Just coming back on that, I think as you say, it's hard when people are resettling back in our force area. It's much easier to manage prisoners who we know are in our prison estate locally and then resettle in our local area. I think, as you say, the issue is managing people coming back from other areas across the country into our police force area. So I think that's something that one of the recommendations in this report was to work with probation locally and our free prison governors that we've got as well, to look at how we can manage that better. And like you said, it will be probation nationally that will have that information, but not necessarily our free prison governors here. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Just for me, then, the recommendations that start on page 13, paragraph 32, there's lots of recommendations there from paragraph 32 to 38. So I suppose those are recommendations. What's going to happen with those recommendations? Are they sit in an action plan? Will we come back about them? So what's going to happen to those recommendations going forward?
Thank you, Chair. So I think with these, we'll obviously definitely come back and report on some of them, but some of them are already in action. So, for example, recommendation 32, that's already earmarked for our local criminal justice board on the 10th of December. So that it has been actioned and just needs to take place. All of them are in action, but I can get back to you with further details on those action plans. So it's definitely not just a recommendation, rather it's actually something being actioned and taken forward.
I think that would be useful, because then we can sort of hold you to account on these are recommendations you made and what's actually the impact for our communities with these recommendations. So it'd be good to hear that. And I am just going to scroll, if I can find it, to ACC Kerr's piece. Sorry, what page? Thank you. And it's just a bit about the early release scheme and the impact it has on us locally. So I think we're all aware there's going to be another tranche come out. We had, was there 100, I think I remember reading, that came out in the previous two tranches? And I suppose, if we got any data or evidence about how were those people resettled back in Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland, or did they go elsewhere? So there was that 100, the people that were resettled back into our force area, and then we had any data about the impact of that, any crime that's gone up, or how we manage that?
Yeah, we have. So it's like you said, so less than 100 prisoners were released into addresses within our force area, and so it is that 100. In terms of reoffending, that the figures were actually very low from what I can remember, and I think we'll obviously provide the exact figures after this panel, but I believe it was 4 in tranche 1 and then 5 in tranche 2. So the reoffending rates were really low, and that was due to the levels of monitoring of the multi-agency hub that managed this process and Operation Drakefall.
And just thinking forward, if more get released, are they likely to be similar tranches of prisoners, do we know yet, or ones that have committed more serious offences? Have we got any idea about what the next tranche might include?
Well, I think based on we haven't got an exact answer for that, other than what was done before, and that was the ones who were excluded, as you know, are the domestic abuse ones, including controlling and coercive behaviours, stalking, sexual offences and terrorism. I suspect that will continue, but it'd be interesting to see if any other offences will be added into that, and that's something that I can take back to Michaela Kerr and her team in terms of the multi-agency hub and get a more clear, direct answer on that one.
I suppose the question is, what's the PCC doing about these prisoners that are going to be early released, and what impact that has on communities? Because I know, you know, the actual facts are far less than what was all over social media and you know, stuff like that. So I think the fear of the early release scheme is heightened across the community. So I suppose your role is to how are you addressing that heightened fear for communities about early release schemes?
And I think a lot of that's in the communication as well, and the detail of the scheme. So I think if we can ensure that we've got detail for people, so they know, so they can almost feel reassured about the types of offenders that we would be releasing, and ensure that there's a sufficient safeguarding processes in place. And I know probation do an excellent job of checking and making sure that you know, to keep us as safe as possible, to making sure that the levels of risk in terms of offenders is low to medium rather than high risk offenders. But it's something definitely that we need to keep continuously improving upon for the next release date.
Les?
Thank you, Chair. Unless I've missed it, and I might have. Would it be helpful for the panel, because the question is, we're here to scrutinise the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, and the Police and Crime Commissioner's office is therefore to scrutinise those other bodies. So I'm just wondering, because this early prisoner release scheme touches an awful lot of different agencies and different touch points and timelines, and I'm just wondering if it would be helpful for the panel if we could actually have that effectively as a flow chart, just so we know who's looking after what. As you know, as a district council, I'm well aware that we get tipped off an advance notice of a housing need in the early prison release and that, but actually there's other agencies. So I just wonder, would it be helpful to the panel if the Office of the PCC can produce a little flow chart that says who's actually involved and who's scrutinising who?
I think it's probably more probation, isn't it? You'd have to go to, they're the ones that are handling it. So yeah, if you can speak to probation, I think they're the lead agency, aren't they, for this, as far as I know, but yeah.
Which comes back to Chair. We're here to scrutinise the Office of the PCC, and the PCC's office is there to scrutinise and support.
Is that something possible you can look into?
Yeah, I did have some slides that I wanted to share, but unfortunately they had sensitive data on. So what I can do is I can get that, try and get at least a bit of a flow chart together so we can see, so the panel can see as a group what that looks like, because there's quite a lot of multi-agency working going on, and you can see on page 123 the number of different members involved within this hub. So I think it'd be quite useful actually to have that flow chart.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions for anyone else? No? Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, on to item 7, the Hate Crime Scrutiny Panel update, pages 125 to 136. Who's taking us through this?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, of course, my apologies for lateness today. You know, being late is not something I enjoy doing, so I'm very sorry that on this occasion my deputy and I were late, so my apologies. The report you have before you is about the Hate Crime Scrutiny Panel, pardon me, which we have established to have a look at the way in which police deal with hate crimes and the procedures they use, and to do some dip sampling. I'm sure I don't need to remind anybody here of the very varied demographic that we have in our force area, and the absolute importance that there is in the public trusting the police to act even-handedly and to not indulge in what I believe the press have called elsewhere two-tier policing, and to make sure that everyone is treated absolutely fairly. This is a part of that. This is a part of how we demonstrate to the public that the police do behave independently and even-handedly and without fear or favour, so that they can get into communities and do their work properly. So I'm very pleased with the outcome of this scrutiny panel to date. I know they've been working very hard to look at what the police do, to think about how to reassure the public that the Leicestershire Police are behaving impeccably and even-handedly, and therefore are enabled to go and do their job properly. There also, as you will see in the report, which I'm sure you've all read, some interesting statistics have come out about where reported hate crime is going and so on. But as I say, I'm sure you've all read the report. I'm pleased with how it's going so far. If you've got any questions, I'm sure I or one of my colleagues could help.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, Les?
If I may, Chair, so I find paragraph 7 fascinating. So there's a belief here that says we've got some data, but we know they're underreporting. So I'd like to understand how that's qualified. And secondly, and this is just my own personal experience, could we also dip sample what happens when a hate crime is reported, where it goes and who sees it and what happens? Because sadly, I had a need to report a hate crime a few weeks ago, and I'm fairly certain it was shot off up to GMP. Didn't go into LLR because they then sent an email to me saying, can you confirm where this is? I just wonder if we can dip sample. Is it a centralised reporting system? Is it going into LLR? I'm just curious because I reported it through our local police webpage. I'm just curious, but I think, it's like all these statistics. We can read the data and then it says, but we think it's underreported. How much is underreported? Why is it underreported? And what we're going to do to make sure it is reported. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, any crime is dealt with by the police force where the crime takes place, not where the victim lives, not where the criminal lives, not where the crime is reported. I believe it's dealt with where the crime social media takes place. Well, in that case, I'd have to go and check how that works. As far as underreporting is concerned, that's a national view. That hate crime is underreported, rather than one that we have come to locally. This is very much about ensuring the integrity of the Leicestershire Police. So this is very much a local one. I don't know if you want to say anything.
No, just to concur, really. I think we've received some anecdotal evidence reports from our officers that would lead us to believe that it's underreported. From that perspective of people not always recognising that they need to report it as a hate crime in terms of what they've experienced. So there's a number of bits of evidence that would lead us to believe that it's underreported, which is why we've made that statement.
So if I can, Chair, that's one of the key points, because I was advised to report it, and it's not until you actually kind of go through the process and follow the flow is that for it to actually find out what the definition of a hate crime actually is. So you've got to go through these set of hoops to even get to, is it antisocial behaviour, is it hate, or is it just social media abuse? Yeah. So maybe there's something that needs looking at as to, the name of the game surely is, whether it's hate crime or any other crime, is to make it as easy as possible and as clear as possible to report it, because that's where we're going to get the right data and the right stats. Thank you, Chair.
This is one that we've picked up before, the difference between a hate crime and a hate incident. So any crime that's committed that you think is hate related, it's your perception of, so there's no right definition, it's because it's how you perceive the crime that's been made against you. So I think there is, and that's the pushback to the PCC, is about what you're doing about it then. So you're saying it's underreported, that minority of people, what you've just said, don't know that they should report it. So what are you doing to inform the public about what they should be reporting? What is a hate crime? How do they perceive a hate crime? So I think it's about education. So I view your role as, if it's underreported, what you're doing about it.
Thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, we always encourage anyone to report every crime that is committed. I when something is motivated by hate, as you yourself say, it's whether the person perceives that, as opposed to trying to prove that the person committing the crime was in fact motivated by hate. So it's falls on the other foot. I think those who are recording the crime, people who are interviewing victims, if they think perhaps that hate, as defined by the Act, might be involved, they will ask the victim. But on the other hand, if you proactively ask every victim of crime, do you think this was motivated by hate, you might lead to things going in the other direction and leading to a huge spike, which would not be accurate, but would give the impression that perhaps people of Leicestershire are far more motivated by hate than is in fact the case. So public education, as with so many of these things, along with crime prevention and so on, is getting the matter out there. I'm not aware we have any specific plans to do a public education on this.
Well,
It might come under one of the commission.
Yeah, I was just going to build on what you've kind of said, Commissioner. I think the fact that the hate crime panel is in existence and the fact that we are talking about it is the first step. The other bit that's outlined in this paper is the online hate crime hub, which is a web-based resource, which once it's up and running later in May, we will be able to push on our social media. We will be asking partners to push on their social media that will raise awareness of hate crime, what hate crime is, how to report it, what to do if you're a victim of it. So I think that piece is the piece that you're talking about in terms of what will the OPCC be doing to raise awareness of hate crime, what it is and how to report in the longer term. That should be up and running in May.
Is that in conjunction with the districts and things like that? Because I think I've heard that from elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other point is some people from some cultures don't realise that it's a crime against them. It's not within their culture to accept that it's a crime against them. So what are we doing to educate those groups of people that, because they can't report a crime if they don't think a crime's happened to them. So how are we going to reach out to those groups because of the different cultures?
I think that's a really important point, and I think when we start to kind of promote the online hate crime hub, which you're right, has been partly funded by all of the community safety partnerships around all the districts. So as we start to talk about that and promote that kind of within the partnership, I think it's a really good challenge to us to kind of say, how are we going to make sure that that reaches all of those different areas and the diverse communities across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland? We can take that away, have a think about.
Thank you. Christine.
Thank you, Chair. On page 129, we've got the outcome of the six cases that have been looked at in the three panels. One of those, the outcome was it was considered to be inappropriate and inconsistent with police policies. It was a while ago since I read this, but I don't know if there was anything in here about what happens about that. Going forward, is that highlighted as an area for that officer, or is that highlighted as an area of training for the force? It's just the school and the police. Yeah, there is some in there. Yeah,
it is highlighted further down, but yeah, essentially that would feed, depending on what it was that came out, and obviously it wouldn't be appropriate to talk about the detail because they're talking about detail of individual cases, but depending on what the recommendations that came out of that, for example, should it be individual officer learning, that's picked up through the line management chain.
Thank you. It kind of comes back to the same point. So it's page 132, paragraph 24, with the case that was happening in the school. And you said about the hate crime hub, promoting it. Your social media channels are really good, but most of the children that I know aren't on the same social media channels. Who'd have thought it? So, you have a very good program that goes into schools that talks about knife crime. I just think maybe that's something we need to consider about going into schools and talking to children during assembly, and we'll just hope that they're listening. But there's always, the social media channels that they use, more Discord, TikTok, that sort of thing.
Well, I'm upset that you think that our teenagers aren't linked into the OPCC social media, but absolutely taken on board, and that's why I talk about leveraging the partnership approach to be able to promote that. I know the Violence Reduction Network do a huge amount of work in schools and promoting their activities within schools, and so using some of their networks and socials to be able to communicate that is going to be really important.
I think just on a county, I don't know if it happens in City and Rutland, but we send out a bulletin to all head teachers at the county. So that would be something that would be good to highlight to us in City and County through our education channels, that we send that out to all head teachers to kind of hit that point there as well. Les.
Thank you, Chair. Just an idea or a potential opportunity for Commissioner's Office is Blaby District Council have an extremely vibrant youth council, of which hate crime is one of their key focus points. So, and that age group is 8 or 9 up to 15, 16, I think 17 is now the eldest. So if you want to come and talk to a vibrant group who are very focused on hate crime and are on the target demographic that Liz has just raised, I would suggest you touch base with Blaby District Council officers and see if there's an opportunity there for you. Thank you, Chair.
I think there's a potential in there through the CSP funding as well for all the districts, City and Rutland, to do some promoting of that as well, because I think it would be useful. But I think there's a lot of work to do, so it'd be good to have this back on the agenda after the hub's been open sort of in the autumn time, just to give us feedback about how and what we're finding out, and if we're still believing that it's underreported or whether we're gaining some ground, I think, because it's something we need to keep on top of. Okay, any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, on to item 8, the update on the PCC and the force implementations of the Section 106 funding review. Really good paper. So thank Kira for this. Anything you want to add to this at all?
I don't think so, Chair. I agree with you. I think it's a very comprehensive paper, sets out where we are with all of this. And of course, the benefit that is accruing to the residents of Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland from the money that we do get from developers from Section 106. So I think it is a very important contribution that, of course, didn't used to happen in the old days, but now does.
It'd be interesting to know, because obviously on that panel report we originally did, there was a total of how much funding was sitting in council's bank accounts. I can't remember, 17, yeah, about how much of that is still left to try and draw out for policing. So it'd be good to get an update on from the original Section 106 panel that we had, about how much has been brought down, how much is left now. I don't know if you've got that data.
No, I was just going to say we don't have that figure for you today, but we'll put it in the next report for you.
So it'd be good to know how much is left there. And I suppose the next question is, great with all this work you're doing, and I can see there's been a great amount of money already spent on some really good initiatives for local residents. But I suppose moving forward, there was always a plan that your Section 106 request would be more open and not so tight. So is that happening in your requests for development that comes forward, that they're a much wider ask? And are we, to what my point is, we're not going through this process all the time, are we? We've made a change to how we ask for Section 106.
Yes, Chair, that's correct.
So have you got evidence of what's come in since this has changed? Have you got some detail about what sort of asks we're putting forward? That'd be good to have some of that detail.
Well, we can get it to you, Chair. I haven't got it on me, but yeah.
That'd be good to be in the next report, I think, as well, to find out how we're doing things differently. Otherwise, yeah, we've got this money out. We don't want to be back in this whole cycle again. We need to make sure we've done things differently. So it'd be good to hear that as well. Any other questions on this from anybody?
And I think because this is the journey where we actually started, and you know, and it's not just about the police force. It's not just about the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. It's not just about local planning authorities and their Section 105 and Section 106 officers. And it's not just about the developers. It's a whole collective process. And as Police and Crime Commissioner, you might want to have a chat with the minister responsible for this area to allow that flexibility to be put in, because the Section 105 officers, the Section 106 officers will comply with the guidance and the regulations and the rules that they're presented with by national government. And we've got to get over this and away from this principle, because if the force want to invest in new radio systems, the transmission doesn't end where the geography stops. It's a radio, and we collectively, and that probably starts with government, we need to get more flexibility in this, especially for things like the police, the fire, because the geography is irrelevant. You need that resource wherever it fits and works in LLR. So that's one for the PCC to take back, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this paper? No. Okay, so we've dealt with items 9 and 10 already. So item 11 is the date of the next meeting. So that will be our AGM. That's scheduled to take place on the 9th of June, and hopefully we'll have more members turning up at that one. Fingers crossed, because we're very light on the ground. And item 12 is any other items that have been decided to take us out. There are no items, so I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everyone.